Alright, we'll start this with a walk around. So, two modifications that I've done on my plow is I made a homemade snow deflector, and this is made of recycled 5-inch fire department supply line, which if you go down to your local fire department, normally they have a bunch of this stuff on hand just because after it fails testing they need to get rid of it. So that's something that you could use. You could use any type of heavy rubber, a heavy rubber conveyor belt, or you can go out and buy your own. I've had issues with supporting the cutting edge, so I've added more gussets over time to help support the cutting edge, but I don't know if you really call that a modification or a repair. Other than that, the plow is completely stock. Tires are very important. I have plenty of tread. I like a kind of a rough tread like this. You just want to make sure you have something that'll grip pretty well. And I'll also show you my suspension. And this is the 3-inch leveling kit in here. So if I didn't have this, this coil spring would be all the way up in here. So this just brings the front end of the truck up a bit and really just helps out with the clearance. As you can see, like I said before, only have about 3 or 4 inches to spare there when it's angled. Up front, I have, I forget what that is. I think that's a 42-inch LED light bar that I got off of eBay. I made these rail mounts myself. They're a little bit rusty, but this is something anybody with a little bit of fabrication skills can make. This mount is just made up of some flat stock that's been bent up on a brake, and then it's just welded up together. And then the way it stays on there is there's a little bit of a gap in between the screw and the light bar. So as you tighten down the screw, that kind of pinches everything together. So I've never had a problem with the mounts on there. As you can see, I have a Sirius XM antenna, which you'll see that in the cab in a minute. I have a dual rotating halogen warning light, which I love that thing. It's been incredibly reliable, and I think that's a really good option. You need to have some type of warning light or something just to warn other vehicles in case you're stopped in the middle of traffic that, hey, I'm a hazard, you know, be a little patient, start slowing down a little bit early. A lot of other guys like to put strobes in their grills, on the side of their trucks, in the headlights. I like the Hideaways. I've had a major issue with them though. As you can see, I have my old Hideaways still in there. They are right there, but I had 2 of them burnt out, and then the box started malfunctioning, so I just kind of gave up on that. An alternative to the older style, I guess you could call them incandescent Hideaways, is the LED Hideaways, but they're like 40-50 bucks a pop. So I'm happy with my dual rotating halogen light. I think that thing does great. One of my favorite modifications in terms of auxiliary lighting are these 2 36-watt 6-inch Cree LED lights. They're floodlights. I made the mounts myself. Just a piece of thick flat stock. I drilled out 2 holes, so there's 2 self-tapping screws that hold this thing snug on here. I drilled out a hole in here, and I mounted a bolt going up, and then I welded the bottom of this plate and I ground it down smooth. So there's a bolt that's welded onto this plate, but it'll sit flush against anything. And then I have a nylon washer, or a nylon nut in there, and that allows this light to swivel. So if I need to direct light to the back of my truck, it's easy enough for me to just swivel this. These things are excellent. Say when you need to look at a driveway, you know, you're on the main road and you need to take a peek down the driveway, make sure there's nothing obstructing it. It's great for lighting up walkways. That's what I mainly use it for, to be honest, is lighting up walkways, because I shovel walkways to make extra money. But those are nice. Again, this is completely optional. In the back here, I just did a video about this. This is something necessary in my opinion. You need to have some type of auxiliary reverse lights because it's dark. Sometimes it's snowing like crazy. You need to be able to see what's behind you. So that honestly is pretty much it. Oh, there is one other thing in the back here that I'll show you real quick. The truck's a bit of a mess right now. I keep my snow shovels and salt in the back of the truck here. And right there is actually an LED light strip. Those are blue lights, and I have a switch in my cab, so when I throw that switch, it turns on that light strip, and then the back of my bed gets illuminated with this nice blue light. So when I'm grabbing shovels out of the back of the truck, I can see everything in the back, and I feel like that's a great addition. Alright, now let's take a peek on the inside, and I'll show you how some of these lights work and other things I have in here. I have a Tech-On-Sha brake controller, and this is honestly one of the best investments when it comes to towing. This is much more advanced than your basic brake controller. I think I spent around $120 on this, This is very intelligent. It'll tell you when you have any faults in your lines. You can adjust the brightness and the colors of the screen. And you also have different braking modes. You have brake mode 1, 2, and 3. And those basically control if you want your trailer to start braking prior to your truck. So that works great, especially if you're heavy. You can program it if you have electronic over hydraulic, or if you just have electronic brakes, and it just makes towing a trailer so much better. So this is something that I would highly recommend to any of you that are towing out there. This switch right here controls the LED light bar. So the way that LED light bar up here comes on is, first you got to have your headlights on, but it'll only come on when the high beams are on, and I have that switch up. So it'll be on right now, and if I turn that switch off, it'll shut the light bar off, switch on. The switch is still on, and I'm going to take my high beams off. So I think that's a great way to operate that light, because you have a switch that only turns it on when you need it. It gets very annoying. Say you're going down a dark road and you want to have some auxiliary lighting, but a car's coming, as opposed to just shutting off your high beams. You have to come off here and shut the switch. So it's a good idea to wire your auxiliary light bar into your high beams. Let me take a seat in here. I upgraded my radio to this Alpine system, and it throws off some really nice sound. I've upgraded all the speakers. I also have a 12-inch sub in the back. When you're plowing and you got some good tunes kicking, it just makes the job so much more enjoyable. Also have my iPod hooked up here, as well as an auxiliary cable, which that's hooked up to my Sirius XM. I have a CO meter. Sometimes exhaust gases will come into the cab, and that'll alert me if there's CO coming in the cab. I have a bunch of switches back here. The switches don't match because I've burned out switches over the time, and I've never justified spending the money to make them all matching. So this controls the bed light on the left, or the sidewalk light on the left, the bed light on the right. This controls the beacon, which you should hear come on. This is another modification I forgot to mention. So if I flip this switch, turn my key on, and shift the truck into reverse. Oh, well, I gotta put it down for it to go in reverse. That turns on my backup alarm. And I really like the sound of that backup alarm. I don't like to tell a lot of people about what model and brand it is, because I think it's really unique, and I'd kind of like to keep that all to myself. If you really pester me in the comments, I may break a little bit here, but yeah. Also on the right here, this switch turns on the lights in the bed. I forget, it's either that one or that one that turn on the blue lights in the bed. And I also have an air compressor in the back here, and that'll turn on the air compressor. What else do I have in here? I also have a drive cam. So in case anything were to happen, I always have a piece of video evidence, and if it was my fault, then I can just discard the memory card and say I don't have a drive cam and plead my case, but I would never do something like that. Some of you may or may not know that I am a volunteer firefighter, and in New York State you are allowed to run forward-facing blue lights. So this is my lighting control unit. It also does have a couple siren tones in there, which legally I'm not allowed to use. I can also talk to anybody outside by pressing this button and speaking in here, so this is also a loudspeaker. To turn my blue lights on, I press this blue button on the bottom here. And there's also two other blue lights in the grill, and there's some other things that this thing does, which we're not going to get into. So the story behind those air fittings that you saw down below, and this train horn valve over here, in my younger days, less mature days, when I first bought this truck, I remember watching these videos online. The channel name was Horn Blasters, and I know some of you probably know where this is going. But Horn Blasters is a company that sells train horns that like complete kits that you can install in any car or pickup truck. And they took a lot of videos down in Florida where they installed these horns in cars and went up to people while taking video of them and blew the horn, and it just freaked them out. They jumped, and I always thought it was funny when I was younger, but now I just think it's really immature and dangerous, because those horns are really loud, and I hope they didn't, screw up anybody's hearing permanently. Don't do that, guys. Bad idea. But I've always wanted a train horn in my truck, so I got a kit, I installed the horn, and it's no longer active. If anybody wants to get a kit like that, they're great for the first year, but after that, you're always going to have problems with it. There's always going to be an air leak, your compressor's always going to be cycling on and off. What else? The horns. The horns only last for so long. Really high quality professional horns like the Nathan Air Chimes. They sell rebuild kits, but in those horns there's a thin piece of metal called the diaphragm, and those what vibrate and give the horns their specific sound in part. And over time those diaphragms will corrode and die out. So moral of the story, if you plan to do any type of train horn system, just expect for there to be problems. So if it's like a lot of money and you're just on the edge, it's not worth it. But I will say it is nice when somebody cuts you off or something and you blow that horn. It just lets a lot of steam off. But the other thing I have down on here is not for the horn. In addition to that handle that you saw above my head here, this is for a train bell. Now, when trains are starting or stopping, they normally play a bell. It goes ding, 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 and it's just kind of like an alert bell, just to let people know that, hey, the train's moving. And I always love that sound. You could call them an e-bell, but I think e-bell is the electronic version of it. So I have the traditional pneumatic bell. So it's the bell, and then it's got a pneumatic clapper in there that rings the bell. Something I've always wanted. I had it installed in here for a while. And more or less that pretty much concludes any type of necessary and unnecessary modifications I've done to my truck. And hopefully this helps you out, Nick. If any other viewers out there have any other questions or any other type of videos that you'd like me to do about my truck, feel free to leave a comment, and there's a good chance that I'll be able to do it if I feel like it's something worth sharing. So thanks for watching. If you like this video, I'd appreciate you hitting that subscribe button, and I got some cool things planned for this winter, so stay tuned.